Welcome back. Well, today I thought we'd go back to our emergency preparedness plan, our airport plan, and pick up on our middle step. This is our fourth step, P. We've gone through A, which was assessment. We assessed what our family's needs were. The next one was I, inventory. What do we have, not just in terms of the stuff we need, but the skills we need, the experience we need to deal with this. R, resources. That's the stuff that we have available to us that we don't necessarily have. In other words, family and friends that can help out, other places that we can go, services we can utilize, call in if we need them. Now we've got to put this all together as a plan. And in some ways, this is the fun part. In some ways, this can really be daunting. But we're going to get to it when we come back. So, we are in the middle of the hot water right now. How many of you would have believed me if I had said 6 months ago, we're really going to need this information? I wouldn't have. I would never have expected some sort of global pandemic, although I suppose a global pandemic is perfectly predictable. I never would have expected this sort of over-the-top reaction of the government and the media, and I wouldn't have expected lockdowns. I wouldn't have expected our civil liberties to be threatened. There's all kinds of things that are happening right now that were just not on my radar. Now, chief among the things that were not on my radar is I never would have expected that any disaster plan I made for evacuating or sheltering in place, either one, would have needed to go on for more than 2 weeks. So traditionally, that has been the conventional wisdom. If you go to people who know about disaster preparedness, which is to say, everybody from your local agricultural extension helping you do home canning, right up to the wacko up in the mountains writing the manifesto, nobody seemed to believe that anything was going to take us beyond that 2-week threshold. It has. Here in South Central Pennsylvania, we're looking at going into like our 4th week of lockdown, and it's not going to end for at least another 3 weeks. That's what we're looking at, right through to the end of April. So we're going to be in lockdown for a good 6 weeks. That's about 3 times what my emergency preparedness plan had accounted for. I was planning on 2 weeks. Although, to be fair, I was also not counting on having electricity and running water. So, give with one hand, take with the other. Hey, it all works out in the end. But we are in a very good time for making plans because, as I said, we're just in the thick of it. We are up to our eyeballs in the hot water. So we know what we're facing. And frankly, in terms of disaster preparedness, this is probably about as bad as anything that I could imagine, just in terms of the time factor alone. As I say, yes, we have our infrastructure, we have water, we have power. We can walk out our front door. It's not 12 degrees below and, there's so much snow we can't even open our doors. but it's going on for a long, long time, and that presents its own set of problems. So we need to make as much lemonade as we can out of this batch of lemons. So let's take advantage and let's start using this for our future plans. So number one, well, we're going to have to plan for more than 2 weeks. My own plan is still going to center around 2 weeks. I'm still going to use that as my ordinary template, but I'm also going to make sure that I have adequate food and supplies, including things like toilet paper, for at least 3 months. And when you stop and think about that, that is a major change in most of our lives, a major change in our shopping expenditures, our storage. Just what in the world do you do with 90 days worth of toilet paper? Well, what I can tell you I'm going to do is that space under my bed is definitely going to get filled up very quickly. You know, what else are we looking at? And that is part of our plan. Our plan is going to involve just how we are going to get the stuff we need. Many of us have a lot of the stuff we need. Our inventory levels were high, but for most of us, our inventory levels were not high enough to meet the threshold of that assessment, which told us what our needs were. A lot of us are falling short, and we're seeing that now. And as I said before, this is priceless, because it's so hard to guess what you're going to run out of, because it's not even an educated guess. How do you even wrap your head around, I would be locked into my house for 6 weeks? It's just, whoa, you know, now we get a chance to see. So for my plan, like I said, I'm still centering around my basic 2 weeks, but I am also stretching it out a little. In addition to storage, because that's probably the number one factor I'm facing, I need to look at acquiring some more stuff. I need to acquire a boatload of toilet paper, and my favorite brand has been off the shelves for a very long time. The last couple of times that I've gone into the store to pick up toilet paper, and as you know, it's not for me, it's for friends and neighbors who are out. It's not my brand. So, now mind you, I'm okay with this. I can tough it out on an off-brand toilet paper. But if I'm actually going to be acquiring toilet paper that I intend to use for my own personal use, and it's going to go taking up that valuable space under my bed in case of an emergency, well, by golly, I want my own brand. So part of my plan has to be, right now, when I hit a store, if I see my own brand of toilet paper, I'm going to need to grab it, even if it's just a roll here and a roll there. What else? I mean, what are the options? We also have to look at more global issues. Preparing for up to 3 months worth of lockdown means your family's expenses, it's 3 months worth of food, clothing, shelter, rent, utilities, because what we're seeing now is people are out of work. And not very many of us have an extra 3 months worth of funds available. Usually if we do, that money is set aside, it's in retirement accounts, it's in long-term savings. It's not something we can just grab right now grab and go ATM card, shove it in the machine, take the money and go. That is going to have to be a good part of our plan. Saving. How are we going to be able to pull a few extra dollars out of our budget? And we're going to have to do that. We're all going to have to do that because we need to think more long-term than we're used to thinking. We are used to thinking in terms of what I need between now and my next visit to the grocery store, which is usually what, like a week, right? What do I need to get me through the weekend? What do I need until next Friday with payday and we're going to go grocery shopping? We've got to start thinking in terms of a bigger picture than that. So that is not something I expect to be easy. There's not a fast fix for this, and there's nothing magic I'm going to be able to say or do to make that convenient or comfortable, because we are talking about a situation in which, for some of us, we are going to be facing an economic crunch. When we come out of this lockdown, the economic predictions are dire, frankly, dire. And I will tell you something. I get these questions all the time. What did I study in college? I'll give you one for free right here, right now. I minored in economics. So when I look at those dire predictions, I know what they're talking about. And I think they're underestimating. Scary stuff going on. I don't say that to frighten you. I say that to warn you, to prepare you. I don't think they're being honest with the public yet. And I think they really need to be. The sooner we are all aware of what we are going to be facing, the better we will be able to prepare for it. So just be cautious. All right, so now that I've said the scary thing, and of course I don't, like I said, I'm not trying to frighten anybody. I am angry at the people who are frightening us into this mess in the first place. I don't want to be doing what they're doing and just adding more fuel to the fire. So instead, we're going to look at something positive. How can we sort of try to dig our way out of this a little bit? Well, as part of what we're doing here, we're going to start taking a look at economical food preparation. We've already started gathering up some nice, cheap, quick, easy recipes that we can make. We're going to take a look at more options like this. But in terms of our immediate planning, we have to expand a little. We're going to have to go beyond 2 weeks. So when we start writing up our plans, oh, and by the way, for those of you who find it helpful, I do think writing a plan is a good idea. It helps you organize your thoughts, and you can frame it in categories. For example, sheltering in place. How much food do we need? How much additional supplies? How much cash should we have on hand? Does everybody know what their role is? For example, the kids are out of school. Do we know who's teaching them? Do we know who's supervising them? Do we know, if it comes to it, which one of the parents is going to have to take off work to be with the kids? Is this something that has been discussed? Because obviously, the parent who is, more financially expendable is the one that's going to stay home with the kids. Except what we're looking at right now is a situation in which someone else may make the decision for you, because all kinds of industries and services are being closed down. So for all we know, mommy might have been the chief breadwinner, but mommy's business may have been closed. All non-essential businesses in Pennsylvania are closed right now. We're not the only state facing that. So In fact, things may be flipped. It's got to be written into the plan. So, some guidelines for plan writing. You always need to start with your basics and move up. Basics. Number one basic, water. Do you have an alternate source of water? We've talked about this. If you have a few large trash cans that you can secure somewhere, in a cool, dark spot out in your yard, in the shade, cover them up, you'll have water. It may not be suitable for drinking, but it will absolutely be suitable for washing. 3 large trash containers should give you about 100 gallons of water. And 100 gallons of water, for drinking water, if you can use it for drinking water, that is 100 person days of water, which means obviously if you have a family of 4, it's 25 days of water. 100 person days equals 25 days of water. You've got 3 weeks worth of water. That's how you need to think of that. When you've taken care of your water issues, you need to start looking at food. And we are going to talk more about the kinds of food that you should keep if you're going to have to do long-term emergency provisions. In other words, if you are going to have to feed your family out of whatever you've got in your cupboards for 3 or 4 months. And frankly, I'm not sure we're not looking at that right now. I don't know one way or the other, but there are economical ways of doing that. Usually, when we move into that time frame, we are no longer looking at the foods we ordinarily eat. Usually at that point, we're going to be talking about gradual changes in the food that we are eating, our diet, our food prep over time. Again, we're going to talk about that. That needs to go into our planning. Other things. Given the fact that most emergency situations are not going to be like this pandemic, you need to make sure everybody knows where they're supposed to be. Does the family know where to meet? Do we know who's going to pick up the kids at school? Do we know who's checking in with mom? Do we know who's checking in with the rest of the extended family? Do we know how we are going to do this if we lose electricity, if the cell phone towers go down? Have we got plans for all this? This goes into our planning. So planning, as I say, it's fun. I find it fun. It gives you a chance to just really explore, but it can be complicated. And that's this next part, the part we're doing now. When we have gotten into our plans, even just a little bit, we're at least going to feel some sense of comfort, because that's the point at which we're going to feel like we're in a little more control. Yes, we know we have needs. Yes, we know we have an inventory. Yes, we know the inventory isn't meeting the needs. Yes, we know there are resources out there. Yes, we may not be able to get to the resources, etc. But the plan, once we start formulating the plan, that's when we start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. We're going to be able to see what we can do. When we go on to further steps, for example, the next step, which is organizing, that's a lot of fun too. That's when we're going to actually see some physical, tangible results. That's also gratifying. But for now, we are going to be able to just walk through our plan. So, given the fact that we are in the middle of our pandemic, allow me to suggest some of the things you might want to put at the head of your planning list. Number 1, food and supply storage. As I said, I'm already looking at that. Where am I going to store things? Because I know I'm going to have to store a lot more than I originally thought. Access. When we start to look at storing 3 to 4 months worth of stuff, that's when we're going to start looking at things like those volume discount stores like Sam's Club or Costco. Walmart's pretty good about this too. Are we going to be able to do this? Or do we have access to one of those? Even if you don't have access to one of those big club discount places, everybody has access to Walmart.com. And it doesn't take very much. I, by the way, order stuff from them all the time. They are my major source of boxes for my Etsy sales, Walmart.com. So I would say not a month goes by when I'm not already placing an order with them. And it's not going to be all that difficult to place an order for their 48-pack roll of toilet paper, 48 roll pack, that's how it works, of toilet paper. Shove it under the bed. And I can probably add a few things every time I place a Walmart.com order. But am I going to be looking at different things? Yes. And I think that's something we're going to want to put into our plan right now. So look around, start thinking in terms of storage. Where are you going to be able to put stuff? Cool, dry. And make sure that you have the ability to store it somewhere that rats or mice or voles or whatever don't get into it. That's sort of a big thing around here because, Audie loves the rats and mice and voles and whatever. I think he pays them to come to our house just to play with him. Ooh. We need to look at storage. We need to look at expanding the foodstuffs. When we start doing that, we need to look at bulk buying. It just makes sense. So this is time to get your family involved, get that plan fleshed out a little. And I know this is going to be a rough time because a lot of people are going to be looking at a financial crunch. But let's face it, we're here already. We don't have much choice. So the next time we get together, we will probably go over, I'm going to do a little bit of research for you and start looking at low-cost food options and see what it is that we should be looking at, because even if it's not in our diet right now, we should probably be putting it there. First of all, as I say, I'm expecting a big economic slap when all this is over. So we could be looking at hard times ahead. But if we face something like this again, better we should be prepared. Better we should be in a situation where we've already begun enacting plans to save money on our groceries and all of our necessary supplies so that we can weather the storm. So, as I say, to that end, I'm going to start looking at some low-cost food options. So, meantime, let's start seeing if we can get those plans worked out a little. And we will follow up on this. I'm not doing this every day. We're going to bury this so that at least we can keep things interesting. Okay, stay safe, everybody. Stay sane, too. I will see you all tomorrow. As I said, I'm going to be here till this is done. All right, see you later.